Hello, everybody. Hello and welcome. I am yours truly, the company's expert, and welcome to How to Get Hired, where I do some Q&A. So like every other live stream on the planet, there should be a chat right next to you if you're on the desktop, and feel free to enter in a question, and I will try and answer it to the best of my ability, and I'm going to try and keep up with them today. The word of the day is holistic. Holistic. It's one of those kind of flavor of the month business type words, but you might hear this. It basically means the entire entity, the whole. It means that the components of something are not isolated. They're all related to each other. So you have to talk about the whole thing as an entity. That's what that means. Holistic. So speaking holistically, there you go. If you really want to sound pretentious, you can whip out that word and use it, and people will think either that you're a genius or you're a pretentious jerk. So there you go. It depends how you're dressed, I guess, to determine which one. I got a question this morning about everybody's favorite job interview question. What is your weakness? And this is something that you're pretty much guaranteed to be asked in every interview you go to. They might not always phrase it that way. They might ask it in a really roundabout kind of way, but they always ask it. It's the weakness question, where they ask you about something that you're bad at. Okay, they might say, "Tell me the thing that you need improvement in," or something like that. Or what was in your previous job? What was something that you could have used more training in? Something like that. Anyway, there's always a weakness question of some kind. And it's funny because if you guys have seen my videos, and there's 18 of you here, so thank you. If you're here, you're awesome. Anyway, if you've seen my video on how to answer what is your weakness, basically I say that first of all, don't give an actual weakness, because in a lot of cases in the real world, what happens most of the time is the recruiter will hear you saying something bad about yourself. You'll say like, well, I don't have that much experience in this, or I'm not particularly good at, maybe some social skill or something. And they're like, okay. So now they feel they're getting the dirt on you, and they use that to eliminate you from the running and go with somebody else. It's funny because that's the gist of what I say in my video, and I stand by that. But I always get responses from recruiters saying, that's totally not what we do. We don't do that. It's to see if the candidate is self-aware, if they recognize that they have weaknesses, and if they've taken steps to address them. Self-improvement. That's what this question is really about. We want to see if the candidate has the self-awareness to realize they have weaknesses and to understand that they should maybe try and do something about them. That's what we're asking the question for. Yeah, I'm going to call BS on that. In theory, yes, that is what the question is technically supposed to be for. What my point is that, and you guys have been to a lot of job interviews, I'm sure. You can tell me if that's been your experience. Usually the way it goes is that if they ask that question and you give them an actual weakness, now they've labeled you as a high-risk candidate, because in the process of making a first impression, you've now tainted it. You've now given them something bad about you. Like, for example, if I say, hello, my name is Bill, and you've never met me before. I say, hello, my name is Bill, and I'm a teacher, but I got fired from this job last year. What kind of first impression am I making? A pretty bad one, right? You only know one thing about me, and it's negative. So I could have done 1,000 other great things, but if you hear that one negative thing up front, that's you're going to paint me with that brush. And that's the concept at play here. So I stand by that answer. And I mean, that's what we see in the real world anyway. There are some really good recruiters out there. There's a minority of really good recruiters. They may actually ask the question for that reason, but still the majority of recruiters play this game where if you actually give something negative about yourself, they eliminate you. And there you go. So yes, we haven't received any questions so far. So there's 27 people here. If you have any questions, hopefully the chat's working, but ask them in the chat. You should be able to type in your question, hopefully, and I should be able to see those. We got 33 people here now. Thank you for being here. We're going to do some Q&A. And while we're waiting for the first question, I guess I have to fill some dead air. So what can I talk about? Okay, here's another thing. Here's another couple of comments and some feedback I've gotten. I think this came from YouTube, from comments under my videos. But a recurring theme that a lot of people, a recurring reaction that a lot of people have is when we're talking about the salary question. When you go to a job interview and they ask you, what are your salary expectations? And I did a whole video on that. I've talked a lot about that. It's funny because especially people that might be young, like in their 20s, or people that don't have a lot of experience with job interviews, in response to my video, where I basically say that, first of all, you should never give a number. Okay, if they ask you, what are your salary expectations? It's a little unintuitive. Because the problem is that you've got a conflict there. If you say my salary expectations are very high, then you're basically pricing yourself out of the market, and they're going to go with somebody cheaper. They have a certain range usually for a job when it comes to compensation. From the lower limit to the higher limit, and anywhere in that range is a possibility. But if you say, I want this amount of money, which is way outside of the range, then you basically just eliminated yourself. That's the problem. On the other hand, if you lowball it and say, I want this very low amount of money, I'd be happy with that. Then the obvious thing is that, well, first of all, the job doesn't really make sense now if they're only going to pay you this absolutely tiny amount of money. And secondly, there's also a bunch of negative things about that, where if you give a very low amount, you say, I'm happy with that amount, there might be negative things like, number one, they feel that, okay, then you're worth that much, meaning that you're not that capable. And we don't want somebody incapable. We want somebody that's good. So no, that's not an appropriate amount of money to pay for this. We're willing to pay for somebody good. And so you've eliminated yourself. The other obvious downside to that is that if you say you're okay with a low amount of money, let's pretend that you get to the end of the process, they give you an offer, and they give you an offer for how much? The low amount of money. And you might be disappointed with that, and it might not make sense. There's a whole bunch of other negative things about that too. So it's kind of it's a no-win situation. You can't make it too high, you can't make it too low, and you have no idea what their range is. A lot of the time they don't disclose it. So a common reaction to this that I think is kind of interesting is a lot of people write comments on those videos and they say, well, I hate this kind of guessing game. It's almost like a feeling of entitlement. If they don't want to pay me a good amount of money, then it's not worth my time to be here. And if you think that, that's one thing. But if you signal that in any way, you are eliminating yourself right there. Because, first of all, you're acting very entitled. Now, listen, I know that that's probably the reality of the situation. But the problem is if you're saying well, it's not worth my time to be here. Right off the hop, that's making a very bad first impression. Okay? It's the equivalent of you going to buy something at a store. And they say you want to buy, a car or something important. And the salesperson comes up to you and says, you want to buy a car? Okay, well, I've got a red one in the back. It's $50,000. What do you say? And then you're like, well, I don't know. I need to see it first and everything. Like, okay, well, what? I got a red car. It's $50,000. What's the problem? Right? You don't want to buy it for $50,000? Okay, well, that's the only car I have. Goodbye. That's a silly thing, right? The process is you sort of talk a little bit about what you're looking for, and they talk a little bit about what they'd like to sell you and what might make sense in their opinion for you to buy. And then you try and arrive at a sort of, common ground, and then you can have it make a transaction, right? That's the process. And that's exactly what's going on in the job interview. They're asking you a bunch of questions. So like, what type of person are you? Do you have all these things that we're looking for? Are you the type of person that would want to do this job? Is this kind of your forte? That kind of thing. Right now, if you're kind of too cool to play that game, or at least that's how it comes across, even though it might be an honest statement of the actual situation from your perspective, you're making a terrible first impression, and you're putting out a lot of sort of negative points for them. And they might just eliminate you on that and say like, look, this person doesn't seem like they really want to be here. They don't really want to learn about the job. They just want to know how much money it pays. And they don't seem particularly interested in the job itself. So that's kind of a red flag, right? So that's the reaction that a lot of people have to that question. And a lot of people were writing that in the comments, and then the other part of it, which I always like, is that people say, well, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. Yes. However, if you act like that, what's their reaction going to be? Right? If they say, look, we've got a job, we'd like to offer it to you. Are you interested? And you say, well, I don't know. I don't know if I really want this job. Would you hire that person? If you need help moving your furniture and you ask a friend, can you come over and help me with my furniture? And they say, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't really know if I enjoy doing that. Would you want that person to come over and move your stuff? They'd probably get to your place, and then be totally uninterested in actually moving your furniture, right? They wouldn't actually help that much, right? That's the vibes they're putting off. That's what they're signaling through their explicit verbal communication and their implicit nonverbal communication. So that's the problem with thinking like that. Okay. As soon as you start thinking like that, as soon as you start showing it, the chances of you getting hired go right down. Okay. So the problem is you have to sort of not show any of that. That's what diplomacy is. You have to not show any of that and just try to make them like you and think you're wonderful. And you have to suppress all that stuff, even though that might be true. We're dealing with people here, and people are very petty. And this is what communication skills is all about. Okay. So anyway, I've been rambling on for too much. We got some questions. Thank you so much. There's 25 people here. Let's get to the questions. Okay. So Kyle is here. Hello, Kyle. Kyle says, I was forced into transitioning from physical labor most of my life due to loss of sight. Okay, you mean like eyesight. Okay. I'm ill-suited for office spaces, and I'm curious how I can translate some of my skills to look useful. Well, there's several ways. I mean, like first of all, it's very general what you're saying. But for example, one of the more obvious things is like you could be an instructor, you could be a supervisor. Rather than doing the work yourself, you could actually supervise people who are doing it, supervising younger people perhaps that are doing more of the physical work, and you're supervising them, right? That's an obvious sort of thing where your skills would be valuable. And that's also a natural sort of progression too. You don't want to work in an office, but you're curious how you can translate some of your skills to look useful. Well, usually things move more upscale, right? Now, you don't need to work in an office, but if you're supervising people or you're advising people or you're consulting with people, right? Some kind of a foreman, some kind of a, maybe even a manager. I mean, I don't know what your management skills are like. If you're good at managing people, people want to work for you. You're fair, you're reasonable. You can be firm when you need to be. I mean, like, I don't know if you have that together or that kind of role appeals to you. I'm not sure, but those are some of the areas that can go into, Kyle. Just think of like what people do. I mean, manual labor, and you go upskill. Usually you have a lot of experience, not just doing the manual labor, but in learning what to do. And depending on what the context is and what you enjoy, I mean, you can go many different ways with that. So if you had more specifics, please feel free to let me know. But that's kind of a direction I would look in. Thanks for the question. Bumblebee says, I'm quitting my job right now. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. It is perfectly mutual and there are no hard feelings. Okay, well, that's good. That's not super common, but it does happen. So that's good to hear. How do I answer the question, why are you leaving your current job? Okay, why are you leaving your current job? Now, who's asking you this question? Is this an exit interview on the way out? Or is this a job interview with a new job? If that's the case, and they're saying, the question is usually, why did you leave your last job, right? Usually that's how they phrase it. And if that's what you're asking about, in a nutshell, a great answer is just to say, I'm ready to do more. Okay, what you don't want to do is first of all, you don't want to say anything negative about anybody at all, okay? You can't say anything negative about your boss. You can't say anything negative about your previous employer. You can't say anything negative about the work you did. Anything like that. I mean, you can, but if you do, it's a red flag, okay? So don't do it. A great answer is to say, I'm ready to do more. Maybe I've been doing my work, I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm ready to do something new and exciting, to expand my skills, bring all of my skills that I've acquired, and use them all together in one role, something like that. And then talk about the job that you're interviewing for. Okay, that's how these things go. When you go to a job interview, you're there for one reason. You're there to talk about the job that they're hiring you for. Okay, that's what you're there for. Now, it's weird because they're going to ask you all kinds of questions about other things. And this is one of them. Why did you leave your last job? Now, you end up talking all about your last job, right? If you're not careful, you can get sidetracked. You can go into a big story about your last employer, what you did there, how it went, what you thought of the whole thing. That's all a waste of time. The more you talk, not only is it not doing you any good in making your case for you being the best candidate for this job, but the more you talk, the more you run the risk of saying something bad, giving off some red flags, like saying, I didn't get along with my last boss or something like this. Oh, that's a red flag. Now I'm interviewing this person. Now it seems like they're the type of person that doesn't get along with people or doesn't like authority, telling them what to do. That's a red flag. So things like this, right? So what you do is you try and shut down any conversation about your previous job. That's none of their business, and it's not what you're here to talk about. And you say, look, I'm ready to do more. I want to use these skills. And you talk about skills that they're looking for in this job. And I want to do this kind of work. And coincidence, that's the kind of work that you do in this job. So you see, you're using it to sort of talk about this job. And that's the only stuff they really care about anyway, right? What do they care about? What you did in some previous job? They only care about what you can bring to them in the job they're wanting to hire you for. Okay, so that's the general approach to that question that usually gets good results. But great question. Thank you, Bumblebee. Moonlight says, greetings, Bill. I was applying to online jobs for months, but they can be super competitive. Yeah, they're also A, usually not good jobs. B, you're up against some very stiff competition. You have hundreds of applications going in for a lot of those jobs. And C, they can sometimes be fraudulent. They keep reposting the same jobs over and over again, and it's not really forthright. So yeah, that's not a great place to find a job. It can be done, but it's not the best place to look. What specific advice or recommendations do you have to improve my chances in this area? Well, my first specific recommendation would be, if you're only trying to get a job by applying to posted jobs, okay, and especially if you've been doing it for a while and you haven't really got anything very promising so far, expand your job search so you're not just using that one method. You're using other methods, okay? The big thing that you guys know that I talk about all the time is networking. That's a term that means several different methods of getting a job. But in most cases, you're not applying to jobs that are posted publicly. Instead, the basic idea is that you're proactive, okay? You're not waiting for a company to post a job or a manager to post a job. Instead, you contact the manager proactively and say, hey, I'm here. I'm great at this. I'd love to do this. If ever you're looking, let me know. Like, that's the basic idea. You're proactive. Now, most people you send that message to, okay, whether it's over social networking or whatever, they're just not hiring for the type of person you are right now. So that's fine. However, statistically, some will be. And it's a numbers game. The more people you reach, the quicker and more likely the chances in a given amount of time you will hit upon someone who's just happening to need someone that has your skills right now. They're about to do a search. They're about to get the job posted and everything. But wait a minute, you just came along at precisely the right time with the right skills, and now they're interested. And the way you contacted them signals that you're passionate, you take initiative, you are professional, you have great communication skills, you have great interpersonal skills, things like this. Okay, like it's a huge gold mine for how to get a job. Okay, usually in the natural progression of things, people find out about this kind of a little bit later when you're getting your first career job. Most students coming out of school, for example, don't do this by default. However, in the grand scheme of things, and I can't remember what the statistic is, but it's like a very high number. It's like 70 to 80%, somewhere in there, of people who have jobs get them through networking, not through applying to job postings. Okay. So there's this huge universe of things to explore there. Check it out. I've done some videos. You could do Google searches, just start doing research and use alternate methods of getting a job. Okay, you don't have to abandon what you're doing. Just add on other methods that are a little bit more promising. But good question. Daniel MM says, I had an initial job interview recently and the recruiter kept asking about my current salary, but I didn't feel comfortable disclosing it. What are your thoughts about disclosing current salary? Okay, so here's the deal. Now, obviously, like when I get these questions, it can come from anywhere in the world, any country, and different countries and different regions have different laws about what interviewers are allowed to ask you in a job interview, blah, blah, blah. But here's what I'd say. Okay. Number one, how much someone has paid you to do something in the past is none of their business. It's also confidential information. It's private and confidential information. A job interview, like I keep saying, a job interview is not a deposition. You don't have any obligation to answer any question that they ask you. They could ask you for your credit card number, right? But I think we both know that it's not appropriate for them to ask, and it would be silly of you and unsafe of you to give out that information, right? Salary information is the same thing, okay? It sometimes fools people, especially when they're kind of new at this. When you're not on your home turf and you're out of your comfort zone, you're in a job interview, especially if there's like a couple of interviewers, it's like a panel interview, and they all seem professional and they seem very serious, and they ask you these pointed, direct questions, and you feel all this pressure to answer them, right? Feels uncomfortable. A lot of times, that's intentional. They're trying to make you uncomfortable because they're trying to put pressure on you to answer these questions when they don't have any right to an answer. They don't have a right legally to an answer, and they don't have a right ethically to an answer, okay? Now, in some cases, okay, that sounds all well and good. You know, you can have all your morals and your ethics, but at the end of the day, if you refuse to answer the question, they just don't give you the job. That's a risk you have to take. But here's the thing. If you disclose your salary, the reason they're asking for that is simply because they have no clue how much you're worth. And so as a way to determine what's a reasonable amount of money to pay you and what you're worth, they want to know what you've been making most recently. Okay. If you're working now, they want to know what you're paid now because that's what you're worth to them, right? As evidenced by the fact that that's what you're being paid and you're accepting it. You're staying in that job. So that must be what you're worth, right? That's the logic that they're employing here. Okay. Imagine if you're a student and you were working a summer job and you were doing a manual labor job painting houses, but you just graduated with a master's degree. Okay, if they say like, how much were you paid in your last job? And you were paid minimum wage because you were painting houses. Is that an accurate assessment of your value now that you've got a master's degree? Of course it isn't, right? This is flimsy logic. It's like this fuzzy logic they're using, okay? It can be true, but not necessarily. So if you disclose the salary, that's what's going to happen. They're going to offer you essentially your current salary and maybe a tiny little negligible bump, right? And they're going to stick to that, right? It also eliminates any bargaining power you might have when you want to negotiate salary later on, if it gets to that point, okay? So a great answer is just to say, well, I actually don't disclose compensation information as a matter of personal policy. I'm sure you understand. And then you shut up and you stop talking and you let them move on. It's a flat no, but you say it in a very professional way, maybe with a smile on your face. I'm sure you understand. I just don't actually disclose that information, just as a matter of policy. I'm sure you understand. And that usually gets you out of that situation. Now, if that's not good enough for them, then it's a red flag. There's something wrong with that interviewer or that employer. But that's what I'll say. Thank you, Daniel MM, for that question. I know a lot of people are wondering that kind of stuff. Anytime it comes to salary and compensation, there's a lot of people that are interested. Gutty W says, how do I justify a long gap of 10 years? Well, it depends. What were you doing for 10 years? I mean, usually there's some story behind that. If it's like a year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years, there's certain things you can say that will not be regarded as a red flag. They'll just accept it, and that'll be that, and they'll move on. If you say, I went back to school, that's an acceptable answer. So, little tip here. If you've been off for, say, 2-3 years, for some other reason, go quickly take a couple of free online courses, and then you can truthfully say, I went back to school. I got some training in the specific area that's relevant to my job or my career or my ambition or this job, because I want to brush up on my skills and make sure that I'm au courant, make sure that I'm up to date with that stuff. And that usually is disarming. If you had a sick family member, something like that, if it's like a medical thing that's like serious for you or somebody else, there's usually no harm in disclosing that if you're comfortable doing it. You don't have to give them all kinds of specific details. That's none of their concern. But you say like, look, I was caring for a sick parent or my spouse or, a sick child or, like whatever. That's usually a good one too. And there's other things you could say, but to make it short, I would fall back, unless there's a really specific story that you can tell and anyone listening would reasonably think, okay, that makes sense. No red flags there, right? Unless you have that, I would quickly take a few online courses, free online courses. I'm not trying to push my own course. I'm just, something. And then you can truthfully say, I got some training. I went back to school. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, I can't read Cyrillian script, unfortunately, but next question. If you agreed with the offer but have not yet signed the contract, is it possible to discuss the benefits or will no longer be ethical? Listen, if you haven't signed anything, you haven't signed anything, okay? It's perfectly ethical. I mean, you know what I mean? That's not an issue. There's nothing to stop you from saying, like, listen, I've been thinking, I know last time we discussed this and I said I'd probably, accept this, but, something's come up. I've re-examined this and unfortunately I can't accept that. I would need this extra thing or whatever. That's fine. I mean, if you haven't signed anything, it's perfectly fine. And it's also perfectly fine for them, just so you understand, to say, okay, then no dice, no deal, right? That's perfectly fine too. Okay, like this is the thing. Thank you in advance. My pleasure. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's not real if it's not in writing, especially when it comes to employment contracts, like employment arrangement. It has to be in writing. That's just how it goes. Anna Monica. It sounds like Santa Monica. Anna Monica from Santa Monica says, I'm doing my PhD in finance in Hong Kong, and I'd like to work in industry. Should I start from an internship trainee position, or I could apply for junior positions directly at top companies? Okay, if you're doing a PhD in finance, my first question, not that this is relevant, but the question forming in my mind is, why did you get a PhD if your ambition is to work in companies? Usually, more people with master's degrees in finance are hired than PhDs in finance, like proportionally. So presumably, the PhD in finance trains you and prepares you to do very specific work. You're going to do financial engineering, or you're going to do, economic research or something like that. So, I mean, that's not my world. I have a master's in finance, but I'm not a PhD type person. I never will be. So I'm not sure what, the kind of employment options are for PhDs in finance, but, here's what you do, okay? Here's a general sort of thing you can do, okay? For any job, if you want to know, what your career path could be or what are your options, okay? Get on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an incredible tool. If you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn, okay? And you might have to jump through a couple of hoops, but basically what you can do is you can use it to do a search for, let's say, everyone in Hong Kong that has a PhD in finance, okay? Or in your particular industry or whatever. Okay, your target industry. And you can do a search and a whole bunch of people will show up. It'll be a people search. And you can go to their profiles and you can read essentially their resume, their profile. And you can see, like, okay, here's a person who has a PhD in finance. What's their current position? Oh, they're the vice president of whatever, or they're the chief financial officer of this, or they're a researcher at this bank, whatever. And you could look at their career progression, okay, by looking at their resume. So you could see like what path their career took. And that can give you examples and ideas. And then on top of that, you're seeing these individuals. If you wanted to, you could go a step further. You could contact these people. You could say, look, you could do an informational interview. You could say, like, what, I'm a student. I'm an aspiring student. I'm going to be graduating with my PhD in finance. I see you have a PhD in finance. Would I possibly be able to have a conversation with you, maybe half an hour? We could do it over the phone, or what I would recommend is do it in person. Okay. Anyway, that gets into informational interviews. But the point is, you could like speak to these people. They could give you firsthand advice. Okay. They have the same qualification that you do, and they're in a position to give you a lot of expert advice. Okay. But even if you don't want to do that, you could at least see what other people with that qualification are doing and what they've done and how they've come up. So that's what I would look into. Very convenient, very easy to do. Do that. Great question. Thank you, Anna Monica, and good luck with the PhD in finance. Okay, what can you recommend to discuss before relocation? Relocation. Well, look, before you like this is for a job, before you relocate to a job, you want it to be signed. You want it to be signed, sealed, and delivered. Okay, you're not going to uproot your life and move to another city or something if it's not all, decided and stated in writing and guaranteed and all that. Okay. So discuss anything you need to that's important to you so that you understand what's going on. If it's important, make sure it's in writing. If it's like mission critical for you, make sure it's part of your employment contract. That's all I'd say. You're welcome, Moonlight. That's not a problem. That's a good question. And same to you, Daniel MM. Yes, that was also a very intelligent question, so thank you. Hello from Ukraine. Hello from Canada. Stay safe. Devendra says, I was selected for a software, I guess that's engineering role in Mindtree, but they are delaying my onboarding from August. I'm a fresher, completed my engineering this year. How do I convey to them that I can get on board? Well, the only, look, people are going to do what they're going to do, okay? There's some good companies out there. There's bad companies out there. I'm not familiar with Mindtree, but if they happen to be a bad company, there's not too much you can do. But there's some basic things you can do, okay? First of all, make sure that you're in contact with them. There's absolutely nothing preventing you from calling up your contact person, whoever that is, and saying, hello, this is Devendra. I'm just following up. Has there been any progress? Do you have a date for me and when I'm starting? This kind of thing. That's a lot of talking. So for a start, you can do that. Now, if they're playing games with you and they're sort of like verbally saying, oh yeah, next Monday it'll happen, and then you wait on Monday and nothing happens, and then they say, oh, next Friday it'll happen, and then you wait till Friday and then nothing happens. If that keeps going on, they keep sort of stringing you along. The only way you can force somebody's hand, okay, is if you have alternate options. If you have no other option but to take this, there's not a lot you can do, unfortunately. But in the meantime, if you're applying to other jobs and lo and behold, you get something, you can always turn around and contact Mindtree and say, look, I got this. You don't give out details, but you say, look, I need to know if you're actually employing me or not, and I need to know by tomorrow. I need to have a signed contract by tomorrow or in 2 or 3 days. That's reasonable. And if you can't do that, then I'm sorry, it's not working for me. You know what I mean? And you can do that. And one way or another, you will have a job, okay? Or you will have a position. So that's the only real way you can force an outcome, right? If you only have one option, you have to take that option. So that's the moral of the story. I'm sorry, you've written more. On asking, they keep saying onboarding is done in batches based on business demand, and we will let you know soon. Okay, fair enough. You say, okay, no problem. That makes perfect sense. But, if it's been since August, now it's been 2-3 months. Can you give me an ETA and, a date? Right? It's reasonable for you to ask for a date. Okay. Anyway, regardless of what they say, if they're stringing you along for 3 months, it doesn't hurt to always keep looking. Okay. That's kind of a general theme of job search. You always keep looking. You don't, verbal promises don't mean anything. They don't. And unfortunately, knowing a bit about recruiters and what goes on, where the rubber meets the road in that business, I would take everything a recruiter says with a grain of salt, or any other interviewer, even if it's a hiring manager. I would do the same. Okay? Don't pin your career and prosperity and livelihood on some stranger's word. You know what I mean? Especially when they won't fully disclose information, right? You do what you got to do. If this thing works out, great, excellent. But it's in the meantime, you've got some time. They're not using you right now. Keep looking. If you can have something else in your hand, a competing job offer or something, that's worth having. Okay? I know that's probably not the answer you wanted to hear, but that is the reality, unfortunately. And I hope the Mindtree thing works out. I really do. And hopefully it will. But just in case it doesn't, it's good to have your bases covered. And the more of this kind of stuff you do, it's actually a good training experience. You pick up a lot of life skills doing it. So that's the other reason why it would be good to do. So best of luck to Vendra. Good question. Angel Torres says, hello. Is it Angel or is it Angel? Angel Torres. Hello. I have had 5 interviews with a biotech company in Boston. Don't get me started about Boston. They have talked to my PhD advisor. I have a final interview with the head of the HR of the parent company. What can I expect? Well, anytime you talk to HR, be prepared for a lot of double talk. That's all I'll say. Look, I don't know what job you're going for, but if it's a higher level job, if it's a high paying job, if it's a job that's very important to their operation, the fact that you had 5 interviews is not a red flag in itself, okay? They spoke to your PhD advisor. Did your PhD advisor give you any feedback? What kind of questions did they ask? Did they seem really interested? Did they seem enthusiastic? That can sometimes help. I have a final interview with the head of the HR parent. What can I expect? Look, the way HR is set up is if they are calling you in for an interview, let alone 5 interviews or 6, they feel that you're technically qualified for the job, okay? Especially after they talk to your PhD advisor and they're calling you back in for a final interview, they feel that technically you are qualified. So you don't have to try and convince them of that in the interview, because the fact that you're even going to an interview signals that they believe you are, okay? The only question that is in their mind right now is whether you're a fit. Now, what does that mean? That means that you're not underqualified and you're not overqualified. Okay, now, you're at a PhD level here, so I don't think you're going to be underqualified. You know what I mean? If this is an advanced level job and they've got an advanced level person like yourself, then that should be a fit, okay? However, there's several other things they are probably wondering. Number one, on a personal level, can they work with you? Okay? Are there any red flags there? Now listen, my experience, and like I'm from the private sector. I've had some professional interactions with academia over the years, but I'm a private sector person, and the reality is that as a general rule, people coming from academia into the private sector, there's a huge culture shock there. These people just don't have the experience of working as an employee. They don't have the experience of working in the real world. And you need certain personal skills. I've seen people that are just absolutely brilliant, like on a technical level, but you can't work with them. Either they're way too argumentative, they're way too stubborn, it has to be their way all the time, or they refuse to do it. Things like this. Those are real red flags, okay? If they hire someone that's technically brilliant, but you just can't work with them, then it's a fail, okay? So these personal sort of traits and things are extremely important. And that's what the interview is about, okay? What they want is someone who's enthusiastic, someone who doesn't say and doesn't disclose that they really want to be doing something else, okay? Because you don't want to hire that person, because the implication is that if you hire them, they're not really going to excel in this job, because this is not really what they want to do. They might be technically qualified to do it, but this is not what they want to do, right? So that's pretty damn important. That's a lot more important than a lot of candidates realize. You know, especially if you come from a technical area, you know, a lot of technical people, and I can say this because I am a technical person. I have an engineering degree. You know, they don't realize how important this stuff actually is. And if you deal with a person that's like really entitled, you know, they're kind of too cool to be here, and they they go to the interview and they say, you know, I don't know if I really want to do this, you know, stuff like that. Or, you know, I've got something going on the side and I'm going to continue to do that. It's like, these are all red flags that are like sudden death elimination, you know. They will kill your chances of being selected for the job, if any of those things, right? So these are the types of things that they're wanting to know, okay? So go in there, be enthusiastic, don't say anything negative. Anything that they ask of you, you know, the answer is sure, not a problem. You know, don't have a problem with anything. Don't get offended. I mean, within reason, don't get offended by anything. You know, if they say hi, you know, and they don't shake your hand, you know, someone could get really offended, you know, or, you know, whatever. It's like, that's a red flag, right? You know, this person is not going to be easy to work with, right? That's what they're looking for. And this goes for most job interviews, but you're probably doing this at sort of the heavyweight championship, right? So that's what you can expect in a general sense from that interview. If I were to guess, that's what's going on. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. That's a great question, Angel or Angel. You're welcome, Anna Monica. I love your name. Oh, here we go. It's my close personal friend, Min. Good evening, sir. Nice to meet you again. It's great to see you too. Or I guess I'm not really seeing you, but it's good to interact with you too. Again, Min, I'm glad you could join me. Yeah. Bumblebee, how do I reject a job offer respectfully? Well, you could speak in words of 4 letters. You could use hand gestures. This is very popular. The middle finger is very popular. Those are all good. Listen, look, it's really not that big of a heart of a problem. Just say, thank you very much for your offer. You know, I appreciate you guys extending me this. I appreciate you guys taking the time to consider me and even to select me for this. It's very flattering, and you know, it's great to have that vote of confidence. I would love to accept your offer. Unfortunately, something has come up and I'm unable to do it. You don't say I don't want to or I'm not going to. You say I'm unable to. Okay. It pains me to say this, but unfortunately, because of something in my personal life or something that just come up, professional or whatever, I've had a competing offer. I'm unfortunately unable to accept your very generous offer. I hope that this won't be an issue going forward. I hope you will consider me in the future if something does come up. I would have very much liked to take it. Unfortunately, my hands are tied. You know, and that's probably going a bit overboard, right? But something like that, something of that nature is perfectly fine, okay? Just be very polite and very appreciative. And that's all. Heba, is that Heba Mohammed, says, I have accepted a job offer, but have other interviews with other companies. I have to accept the offer within 3 days, which is not enough time for me to see the outcome of the other interviews. Would you suggest that I accept the other offer? And if I get a better offer from another company, would it be okay to turn down the other offer after accepting? Listen, if it was me, Heba, here's what I would do. Okay, if they're giving you a deadline, you must accept it by Friday. If you're going to accept it, we have to receive your signed employment contract. We have to receive it back with your signature by the end of Friday. Okay, so if that's what they're saying to you, give the signed contract back to them by the end of Friday. Okay, now, if you are physically able to, go to the other interviews. Okay, even if you're going to an interview after you've accepted this first offer. Okay, if you're physically able to go to the interviews, go to the interviews. Okay, now, if nothing happens, nothing happens. If, however, they end up offering you a second job, so you've got two competing job offers in your hand, okay, then you accept whichever one you want. That's the most to your advantage, okay? That is the way I would handle this. And the reason I would handle it this way is because this is how companies behave. Okay? I ran a company. I mean, this is how you behave. You act in your own best interest. You try and be polite and respectful of others in the process, but you act in your own self-interest. That's what companies do, and this is how they will treat you, and this is how you treat them. Okay? It's not a nasty thing. It's just like, look, you know, they're giving you an ultimatum. You're meeting the ultimatum. If something comes up, something comes up. But you should come out on top. Right? That's how I would handle it. And that's my opinion. Hopefully that makes sense. Verdant says, hello there. Why hello there? I belong to the IT sector, right, but my salary is not good enough. Could you suggest me any good earning field where I could get a handsome salary? Well, I'm ready to change my field. No, I can't. No. I mean, if you're in IT and you want to do something else, do something else. Do you know what I mean? Like, the other thing is that, you know, depending on what you pick, there's going to be a lag. You can't just jump into, say, like, I don't know, what's the opposite of IT? You know, an educational psychologist? I don't know. You can't just jump into that, you know, the next day. You'd have to get training, you have to go back to school, etc. So a lot can change in that time, right? So do your research, okay? And, you know, I can't tell you what you need to do, nor can I tell you. There's many sectors that earn a lot of money, and, you know, some of them are pretty stable, but other ones, they fluctuate wildly. One year they're hiring people, they can't get enough, and the salaries are very high. Another year, they're not hiring anybody. It's a boom-bust industry. For example, oil and gas can be like that, depending on what region of the world you're in. You know, one year they're paying exorbitant amounts of money for anyone, and like everybody's getting hired. The next year, they're not hiring a single person, and they're laying off a ton of people. I mean, you know what I mean? So it depends what you want to do, and it depends what the prognosis is for that industry. Okay, that's a too general question for me to answer. Devendra says you're doing great. Well, thank you, Devendra. I'm trying to do my best. I always find these interesting for me, and hopefully helpful for you guys, because I get all these questions I never thought of, like, just thrown at me. And some of them I feel pretty comfortable answering. Other ones, I've never been asked that before. So I can give you my opinion on it based on my experience, but I'm not one of these people that claims they know absolutely everything. You know, I'll answer the ones that I can. But thank you. And you're welcome, Heba. Great question. Shane Scott says, how do I overcome biases regarding a disability? I have a seizure disorder. Listen, I might not be the best person to to answer that, I don't have a major disability. I don't have a recognized disability or a medically diagnosed disability. So I probably don't have the perspective on that. However, for what it's worth, here's my opinion on that particular issue. Some people, you can't overcome a bias. If they're biased against people that have a disability, if they have this belief that someone with that medical condition is no good as an employee or something, like if that's what they believe, I don't know if you can really change that. You know what I mean? I don't think there's anything you can do to force their hand, unless wherever you're writing from in your country or your region, there's like a labor law or an employment standard law that specifically addresses that. I mean, I'm not sure. In which case, if you feel you're being biased, you may first wish to address it with the company. If they've rejected you and you feel that they rejected you out of hand, you first attempt to address it with them. You've got to do that first. And then if they don't give you any satisfaction, then you contact your local employment standards branch of the government, whatever country you're in. For example, I'm in Canada, and where I am in Canada, we don't have states, we have provinces, and every province writes their own labor laws, and a department of the provincial government for the province, they police the labor laws, and they have a website and they have a phone number. And if you have a complaint about a certain employer or whatever, you can call the number. If you have a question about what is the law and how it applies to you, you call the number. And usually they're very, very helpful, and they're experts on this stuff. And they also have a lot of power. They can shut companies down. They can do investigations and shut companies down pretty quickly, if they're violating labor laws. So, but that's where I am. I know a little bit about some places in the United States, different states that do things, but beyond that, I'm not an HR lawyer. But I don't think you can force somebody's to overcome a bias, just in general. Now, the way I found these things is that some people will be biased and some people won't be. And the great thing about, if you're doing a job search, you're going to be spreading your net far and wide. And some people that you contact or that respond to your contact, they will respond favorably, other ones won't. And if somebody is biased, that sucks, but you move on to someone who isn't biased and you're in, that's usually how these things work in my experience. But then again, I'm not a real consummate expert on biases against disabilities and labor laws and things like that. So that's what I would say. That's my opinion for what it's worth. But that's a good one, Scott. That's a really intelligent question. There's all kinds of different biases. Some are not allowed. Other ones are up to an employer. It stops being a bias and becomes a preference. Now, it's a sort of fuzzy line between the two sometimes, depending on what we're talking about. So that's where it gets a bit tricky, okay? But if you have a medically diagnosed disability that's recognized in your country, there may be labor laws that specifically address that, in which case you would pursue that through the proper channels. That's all I can say. But thank you. Yes, it's live. It's live. It's live like you wouldn't believe. To Live housing, or To Live housing. If you don't have housing, then you haven't really lived. That's all I'm going to say. Lucas Schreiber says, just accepted an offer, and onboarding today is the same day as the company event, like a Christmas party. Christmas party? Okay. Isn't it a little early for that? But hey, whatever floats your boat. That's what I'm going to say. Also, 4 hours of travel, but they pay hotel. I'm very scared and it's a bit much. I never even party. Any advice? Well, if you're partying with the boss, you could drink a keg and then talk business. That always goes over really well. No, I'm just joking, of course. Listen, congratulations on the new job. Depending on the type of person you are, those company events and things can be stressful or they could be awesome, depending on if you're into that stuff, depending on what personality you have. Some people, they're just in their element when it comes to that social kind of stuff at work. Other people, they hate it with an absolute passion. So if you're an introverted type person, and I know because you just started there, it might be a little intimidating. You might be out of your comfort zone. You don't know anybody. You don't understand the culture there, how they do things. You know, what really helps is if they give you a sort of buddy, like, you know, one person who's going to show you around, you know, and kind of show you the ropes and explain how everything works. That really helps. If they haven't given you someone like that, like no one has really said, this is your guide, you know, he or she is going to show you around. And, you know, if you have any questions, go to them. If they haven't done that, I would say, is there somebody that's going to be like my sort of guide? Because I haven't even onboarded yet, and already I'm going to an event. You know, it's worth asking. But beyond that, I mean, I don't really have any advice. Just try and go with the flow as much as possible, unless there's any real red flags or they're crossing the line. And yeah, you know, social stuff can be good if they do it right. And they do it in a sort of wise and appropriate way. Other times, it can be terrible. It can be horrible. And I've encountered both a lot. Also, IT security is great for salary. Yeah, okay, but lots of studying first. Yeah, well, that's kind of a general rule. If you want to make a lot of money, generally you have to have a lot of ability, or you have to have a lot of very thick skin to do something that not a lot of people want to do. And that's why they have to pay so much for someone to do it. Winstor Fu, if I'm saying that right. Winstor Fu says, this thing is going forwards and backwards in all kinds of different ways. It's hard to see where I am. Winsor Fu says, hi, sir. I started off fresh as a sales executive for chemicals recently. May I ask, what's your advice for cold calls? Well, I didn't come up through sales. Okay. That's not my core competency, but for cold calls, I didn't really think people really do cold calls anymore, do they? I mean, I thought we've supplanted that, but I'll tell you what I know, which is about cold calls is not very much. Basically, you know, they give you scripts and all that kind of stuff, like call center type stuff. But, you know, are you an inside salesperson or are you an outside salesperson? Because that's kind of, they're two different things, right? Now, if you're an inside salesperson, just sort of calling up prospects and doing a cold call, usually, hopefully. Now, you're in an industrial area, which is good as far as I'm concerned. I like heavy industry and B2B stuff. There's a lot of good things about it. Presumably, if you're making a cold call, you are not really going to a script. You could sort of talk about what you want. Number one, be very polite. Number two, it starts by asking questions rather than you calling someone up and lecturing them on your product or your service or whatever. Usually the way these things work is you ask questions, you know, like, what's your familiarity with this equipment or this device or this product, you know, something like that. And if they say absolutely nothing, then that kind of sets the stage on what you need to go through. If they say, oh yeah, I'm an expert, I manage a fleet of those vehicles or that product, then you know what you have to say, right? So it's about asking questions. It's about really listening. It's about being very polite. And it could be a tremendous opportunity to work on your social skills, your communication skills in particular. There's a lot of people that do that kind of stuff that have terrible interpersonal skills. They really do. And you could be one of the ones that comes out really understanding people. Because if you take this opportunity and if you're able to really learn how to persuade somebody in a way that works and they enjoy it, that's extremely powerful. So try to learn all you can about that kind of thing. Okay. Min, I'm now learning computer hardware and industrial engineering, but I'm weak at programming. Can I become a business IT without programming in a manager role? Could he give you suggestions? Look, I don't know specifically. I imagine yes is the answer to that question. You can. It is a thing that a lot of times you get managers that really don't know the technicalities of what their subordinates are doing, right? That is a thing. And I know in IT that has happened, especially because the technical skills move very fast. They evolve very quickly. So it is possible to get people way up here that don't know the details of what people down here are doing, because when these people were down here, times were different and you didn't have all the tools and all the languages and all the things that people were doing now, right? So that is common. However, if you want to sort of do it, unfortunately, there's not really that many shortcuts. You probably will have to have some technical skills if you want to be the boss, if you want to be the manager, or even the supervisor. So learn all you can would be my advice. Oh, man, I have a dry mouth and a sore throat, so you'll have to excuse me if I slow down a little bit. But we got Snowy Owl 91. If you don't get a job offer during a live video interview, does that usually mean we won't get the job? Not necessarily. It can mean that, but not necessarily. It depends on the context. Also, do you issue out prizes on your channel? No, I don't. No, I'm going to demand that you give me a prize for answering your question. We'll see how well that goes over. I got a public service announcement. Up at the top of the picture there, it says join my channel. I had to take out some text that got screwed up there because I am doing a second live stream, at least for the next 5 weeks. I'm going to do 2 live streams a week. I'm going to do this one on Wednesdays, which is a Q&A about job search, anything you guys want to ask me about job search or careers or anything. And on Friday, like very, very late on Friday night, early into Saturday morning, I'm going to do a live stream which is about making money, making a living, making an income, making a fortune beyond working as an employee. Okay? Working as an employee is not the only way to make money. I mean, for a start, look at people who have their own businesses. Look at people that do startups or they work in small business. Even look at this. Like, look at YouTube. I mean, you got a lot of YouTube. I'm not, one of these people. I mean, you get YouTubers that's their income, right? So, there's an example right there, right? So you're not working as an employee. You're an entrepreneur. You're doing your own thing. Or, it's also talking about side hustles. You want to make money. You want to have other sources of income. It's good for many different reasons. And I always consider that stuff to be the pinnacle of a career. Okay. You work for somebody else. That makes sense in the beginning. You pick up a lot of skills, a lot of experience, but a lot of people don't want to be working for somebody else their whole lives. Number one, you've got a boss. Number two, it's not on your own terms. Number three, you don't really do the job that you want to do. It's the job that somebody else wants you to do. You have to deal with perhaps difficult people. That's usually the number one complaint. And in the end, you give up to 70% of what you make to somebody else. They give you a fraction of the wealth that you generate for that organization. So this is something I'd like to talk about more, but a lot of people are not really interested in hearing it. So I was in two minds whether to do this, but I had a great response from a lot of people in over the community tab on YouTube. I said, should I do this? And I got a really big response, people saying I should. So starting this Friday for the next 5 weeks for sure, I'm going to be doing the second live stream, and I'm calling it Beyond Employment. So for that chat, you have to be a member to ask questions because it's not a Q&A thing. It's going to be sort of me just giving out tips and things like this. But yeah, so I had to replace some writing at the last minute. Here we go. My screen is backwards. So right there, I had to replace that. If you join my channel, you get members only videos. That's what it said before. And it's still valid. You'll also be able to participate on the Beyond Employment chat too. Okay, where did I leave off here? Stephen Halloran, I think is where is it, or is it Stefan? Stefan Halloran. I'm going for an internal job promotion after doing an HPTI test. You have to break that out. Don't use acronyms because they're not universal. I don't know what that is. After doing an HPTI test and the first round interview had my boss with one of the other directors. What is the best way to avoid being prejudged? If you could define HPTI, that might help me answer that question. You're going to be prejudged. If it's an internal job and you're looking for a promotion, you're going to be prejudged. That's just is unavoidable. Everyone's going to be prejudged for that. In fact, HR in a lot of larger organizations, they have a succession plan where every position, they have an alternative for every position. Because if let's say there's one person that works at the company and they're in a mission critical position and they're the only one that knows something critical, like how to fix a certain important machine or something like that. And that person leaves or they retire or they meet with an accident, the company is crippled because of it, right? It's a risk. As part of risk management, you're taking on that type of risk. So as an insurance against that, what they like to have is everyone sort of cross-trained and people that are ready to move into different positions at a moment's notice, things like this. So that's all prejudging people. That's based on what they know of your resume and your background and your performance reviews. So there's no way to get away from that. Unfortunately, that's just how internal promotions and things work. If you work for government and larger organizations, maybe there's some rules that they have to stick to, or at least purportedly have to stick to, for some of that stuff. But yeah, it's all about their opinion of you, which can be bad. I've been in situations before where people just make assumptions about you without you even being in the room when they're deciding, like, who are the contenders for this new position or something. And sometimes you can change, their perception of you. Sometimes you can't. There's just no way to do it. You have to just leave and go somewhere else. If it's important. That's just the name of the game. Excuse me. Oh. Usually I can talk for hours and hours, but today I'm having some problems doing it. I think I'm coming down with a cold or something. Incidentally, if you're in a management position or you want to be in a management position, unless you've got like a debilitating, crippling illness or something like that, learn to use, this is just my opinion based on my experiences and my observations. Learn about medications. If you got a cold, that's no excuse for not showing up to work, not going to an event. You need to be there. Usually, people find a way to overcome that kind of stuff. Might be okay for workers, but if you're the boss, it's not really generally acceptable. So learn about that stuff if that's your ambition. Lucas says, thanks for the comments. I'm going to study up on social skills. Good luck to everybody out there. Yeah, good luck to you, Lucas. And thanks for putting out that positivity. There should be a lot of positivity when it comes to this stuff. Job search, that's when everybody feels their worst. You feel the most vulnerable. You feel this tall. It's a real, especially for some people, it's like a real shot to your sense of self-worth and your self-confidence. The thing is, it's an illusion. It really is. It certainly feels real. Knowing it's an illusion doesn't make it feel any easier, but it is an illusion, right? And it's also temporary. Doesn't feel like it's temporary for a lot of people, but it is. Okay, I'm falling behind here. I gotta hurry up. EGR NHL, another old acquaintance. Me and EGR NHL, we're like that. We go way back together, back to the good old days. How do you make a good impression on my new coworkers at my new job? How do I make an impression on your? Oh, how do I make an impression on your new coworkers at your new job? It's even harder for me since I am technical and quiet. Thanks. Here's how you make a good impression, okay? Be super polite, be super friendly, be easygoing, and don't bring up complaints or negativity. And people will instantly like you. If they're normal human beings, they will like you. Period. That's all you got to do. Try and smile. When I talk, I don't usually smile. I sort of talk like this. You artificially have to, try and be friendly, look friendly like this, right? If they ask you to do something, sure, yeah, no problem. Assuming it's not a problem, like it's reasonable. And, if they say hi to you, say, hey, it's good to meet you. Right? Things like that. It's little things like that. That's what makes you likable, personable. It makes them want to work with you, makes them want to be around you. And also makes a good first impression when people meet you. If you're friendly, if you're upbeat, you're positive, you try and be helpful, you're polite. And people love a compliment. And I've talked about this before. If you really want to make someone feel good about you when you first meet them, give them a compliment. Now, footnote, I don't mean say something false, make something up. Wow, that's a lovely tie that you're wearing today, sir. No. Find something good that they're doing and tell them it's good, right? If you go to a job interview, like I said this in a video, I think somewhere, it's like if you go to a job interview and they didn't keep you waiting for an hour, you were there, your interview's at 8 a.m. and at 8:01, they called you into the room. Okay, so they did something good. They were punctual. They did not keep you waiting. They treated your time with respect. Okay, so just something little like that, right? If you want to make a good impression, in addition to all the things I said, like being friendly, being personable, being polite, thank them. Say like, wow, you guys are really punctual. I've been to interviews before where they make you wait an hour, after the time that they said they would be ready. You guys are right on time. That's awesome. That's really nice to see. Something like that. And people will go like, oh, well, thank you very much. That's very, very nice of you to say, right? Instantly likable, right? It's just that simple. I mean, don't be disingenuous. Like pick something that's true. Some little thing that they did that they didn't screw up. Something that they did for you. They gave you information when you needed it. They offered you a coffee or something when you got in there. like whatever. Just tell them that. How often do you get a compliment like that? How often does somebody stop you and say, hey, that thing that you do every day, that's really cool that you do that. A lot of people don't do that, but you do that. I just want you to know I really appreciate it. You make my life a lot easier. So keep that up. How often do you get that in your day? Not very often, I'm betting, right? But when we get it, it makes us feel really good. Okay? Everybody could use a little bit of that. Tendi says, hello. Hello, Tendi. Tendi is new here. Tendi, welcome. Thank you for being here. You're awesome. If you have any questions about job search or careers or anything, feel free to ask. I will answer to the best of my ability. Fonzie says, hey, you can't see my thumbs. I got to do that kind of thing, right? Where's my other hand? Oh, it's behind the mic. Here. Anyway, that kind of failed, but it's okay. The important thing is I tried and made a fool out of myself at the same time. Fonzie, hi there. With my experience, companies are interested in hiring me and paying me more than my current organization. Any suggestions on how to approach my employer regarding a pay raise? Yeah, pay raises are tricky because pretty much every single person on the planet thinks they're worth more than they are and thinks they should get paid more than they do. Okay? Unfortunately, managers just can't give everyone the amount of money that everyone feels they should get. Now, it depends on the relationship you have with your boss. It depends on, your history together, right? But beyond that, okay, the only way to really force that or to push someone for it is to have an alternative job offer in your hand. If you feel you're worth this much, this is going to sound harsh, but it's not meant in a harsh way. This might give you an idea of what they're thinking. They might not ever articulate this to you, but that they're thinking this. It's like, okay, you feel you're worth more. I disagree. Right now, you're working for this lower amount of money and you're not leaving. So that seems to demonstrate that you're worth that lower amount of money and not this higher amount of money that you say you want. So, if I don't think you're going to leave and I think you're going to still do your job as normal, why would I pay you more money for it? The only reason I would pay you more money is if I feared that you would leave or slack off if I didn't. Okay? Now, if your plan is to slack off if you don't get a raise, that can come back and bite you pretty hard. That can backfire pretty easily. But the only way to really force anyone is to have a competing job offer in your hand. So if you feel that you're honestly worth more, and sometimes people are exploited, right? And they're being paid far below what the market price is for their skills in that region, in that industry. If that's the case, go out and get a competing job offer, and then regardless of what your boss says, you will come out on top. Right? Worst case scenario, they say, no, we're not giving you a raise. You say, okay, see ya. And you go to the company that's paying you more, that's offering you more. Right? Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully you say, look, trust me, I've got an alternative job offer. I need this amount of money from you guys to match it. Can you match it? And if you can't, full disclosure, I'd have to reassess my work situation here, and to see what they say. That's all you can do. Okay, good God, I've got a whole page of questions after this. I got to hurry up. So thanks for your question, Fonzie. Hopefully that makes sense. Tenacious Danzig. That's an awesome name. I'm going through redundancy and have been sending out my CV, my resume, but just getting little traction. I'm in a technical IT role and going for a similar position at a similar level. What can I do? Okay. Try and get a job through networking, okay? in addition to what you're doing now, applying to posted positions, in addition, tack on other methods of getting a job. Okay, the single most common and popular method of getting a job is networking. Okay, if that is shocking to you, don't take my word for it. Go do your own research. You'll see that's true. So you should be using that method to get a job, okay, to increase your chances. Okay, so that's what you need to do. Okay? People don't hire you because you're the best. Okay? This like for 99.9% of jobs in the world, they're not looking for someone who's the best. They're looking for someone who has everything they need that's right in front of them. That's what they're looking for. Hey, if you can do the job and you got the skills and you're easy to deal with and there's no personal issues, why not? Right? You just happen to be in front of me. Now, if I called you in, that's one way you can be in front of me. On the other hand, if you contacted me and said, hey, I can do this stuff and I'm really great at this and I'd love to work for your company, and I happen to be looking right now for someone that has what you have, you just landed like right in my lap and you're enthusiastic and you're demonstrating how personable you are and how professional you are and the fact that you've got initiative. And you must want to do this job because you're contacting me about it. You're going out of your way to do this. So yeah, come in, let's talk, right? You don't have to be the best. You don't have to be better than anyone else, really. You just have to meet the requirements. You just have to be in front of them. Right? And we all know this. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys know people whose brother or something got a job where they worked because they're that person's brother, right? And it looks like nepotism. Nepotism is when you hire somebody because they've got a family relationship with somebody else, right? That works there. Often it's not nepotism. It's that what they didn't hire the person because they're somebody's brother. What they did is they gave them a chance. They said, this is going to be the first person we talk to. Okay? Because they've got an excellent personal reference. That's how they stand out from all the other candidates. So we're going to give them a chance first. If they have what it takes, then we may hire them. We're not hiring them because they have a brother here. We're giving them a chance because they've got a brother here. Okay, that's not nepotism, that's not illegal, that's not unethical. Right? If you're fair in how you assess people. Okay, so that's networking. Okay, that's one example of networking. So that's something that that everybody needs to tune in on. And usually a lot of people in their 20s, they're just completely ignorant of this. This is not taught in schools. A lot of, like most schools, I mean, if you go to some private school where everybody's parents are like super rich and they're, then they might teach this stuff. I'm not sure, but most people don't know about it. But as you get older, your 30s, your 40s, you do this more and more. Or you climb higher and higher. Executive jobs that pay something like $300,000 and up, over 90% of them are on the hidden job market. They're done through networking. They're never posted. Min says, I'm now using LinkedIn instead of Facebook. That's really good at networking. Now I am connecting with Germany, California. Very thankful for your big suggestions. Thank you, sir. Well, good. I'm glad it's working out for you. SRB says, excellent idea. Okay, Stefan, my buddy Stefan says, LOL, either from sunny Scotland, high potential trait, it's a director position. Sunny Scotland, high potential trait indicator. Okay. They come out with all these tests like every year. I can't keep up with them. Nor do I wish to. But, yeah, they're all in various forms a substitute for getting to know someone. HR asks the question, and understandably, considering what problem they've been given, but they ask the question, how can we assess people without having to get to know them? I need to assess this person in 30 minutes. So how can I do that? And they come up with all these things. Nobody does that. Nobody follows those for the jobs that really matter, for executive positions where you have to like make good decisions and you have to work out, or you could like really do some damage. You could cause millions of dollars of damage to the company if you screw it up. So they're not going to hire somebody based on those kind of stupid things. You know, and personality tests and intelligence tests, aptitude tests. They're not going to, they never hire people in that stuff. What does that say about it? Anton says, after have chosen between two job offers, how to manage or to say to the other company, just leave the door open, as I'm not sure how it will go with the new job. Don't listen. Lose your fear of that stuff, okay? Somebody asked this pretty much this exact question earlier on in the live stream. Bottom line is just be super polite, super professional, and that's all you can do. And no reasonable person will have a negative reaction to it. You say, thank you very much for your offer. You know, I've really enjoyed meeting with all you people and interacting with you. And I'd love to work for your company. I'd love to accept your very generous offer. Unfortunately, I can't. Don't say I don't. Don't say I won't. Say I can't. I'm unable to accept your offer. Something has just come up and regretfully, I can't accept. But I wish you guys all the luck. I hope we will still have a positive relationship. And if you do have any other opportunities in the future, please consider me. Thank you so much. Have yourself a great day. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, something like that. Just be polite, professional, and there you go. That's the correct response. Bumblebee, I would like to specifically thank you. 4 or 5 days ago, I was laying on my bed, all fetal. Today, I had my first interview. Well, congratulations, Bumblebee. That's great news. Way to go. And you are a very employable, capable person. As I said earlier, job search, it plays with your head. It gets in your head. It makes you think that you're worthless, that, you know, the future is all bleak. You know, this situation will go on forever. Those are all false. Okay? As real as it feels, it's all an illusion. You're worth much more than you feel. The situation is a lot more temporary than it feels, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to be okay. One way or another, you're going to be okay. Everyone goes through that. And I've been like that. I've been through that too in my earlier career. So I've been to that place. I know what it feels like. This is one of the reasons why I try and treat people with respect during the hiring process. You know, you just can't hire everybody. I mean, you know, you hire one candidate of a bunch of, you just can't hire everyone, but, you know, you can at least treat them with respect, right? And try and, what I'm doing now, try and give people pointers if you can. But congratulations. TY says, hello. Don't mean my question very weird. I'm from Ukraine and I have all necessary documents for living and working in the USA. I'm pretty experienced with BDM in packaging in my country. In the meantime, I'm weak in English. What do you think? Is there any company which hires me and gives me any time credit to improve my English? Very interesting, your personal opinion. Yeah, okay, this is just my personal opinion because once again, this is not my core competency. You know, with immigration and all this kind of stuff. What I know is that, yes, there's a lot of companies that hire immigrants, people that, you know, you're not speaking your first language. Okay. Usually, in my experience, there are companies that do that. They make it their point to hire immigrants. They will hire them for much lower rates. Okay. That's kind of the trade-off, right? But it can be worth it because you're getting a reference in your host country. If you're immigrating to that country. You've got work experience in that country, in your industry, which is, a good thing that everybody wants. And regarding learning a language, I found that, like, I've worked with a lot of people that, are new to the country and they're struggling with the language. And in my experience, you get sort of two types of people. You get the people that it's obvious that they're learning. They're putting effort into learning the language, improving their communication skills, learning the culture, the customs, all that kind of stuff. And then in my experience, you've got people that don't. They just, for whatever reason, I can't, I don't know the reasons, but they might be working there for years, but their language, their speaking ability doesn't improve, their writing ability doesn't improve. They're sort of, like they're out of their comfort zone. They don't understand the culture and the customs when they get there. But like 2 years later, they still are in that same place. They haven't really improved. So I've seen sort of like it's like a continuum. I've seen people on both extremes. So the people that whatever country, whatever language, whatever you're going to, presumably, if you put effort into learning the language and improving your communication skills and interpersonal skills and knowledge of the culture and familiarity with all that stuff, it will help your career, okay? The better your communication skills, the more potential you have in your career. Because as you go upwards to higher paying jobs, those soft skills matter more, and they matter a hell of a lot, sometimes to the point where they're the most important thing. I hate to say it shouldn't be like that, but it is. And don't use me as an example. I'm not a very good speaker in absolute terms for a lot of executives. I'm one of the worst speakers of people at that level. But this stuff is very important. It's extremely important. So the better you work on yourself, even you could even put the immigrant thing aside. You know what I mean? Whoever you are, the more you work on that, the more interpersonal skills, the more people like working with you and look up to you and enjoy dealing with you, the further you'll go. It's directly proportional to how far you go and what heights you rise to. SRB, what is the latest thinking on the CV format that employers prefer? I don't know. I know what the latest thinking is. These things don't change because people don't change. I mean, they basically want to know if you meet the requirements, if you have what they are looking for. And they increasingly use all these silly sort of things. The latest thing that they're doing, the latest thing that I've kept up with that they're doing is they're not letting humans read your resume at all. And I think you mean resume, not CV, because CV is an academic term where you put on your publications and things like this. Resume is what most people use in the job market where you list work experience. So, the latest thing for resumes is they have applicant tracking software that just reads your resume, looks for keywords. That's one of the reasons why it's a losing game to apply to posted jobs a lot of the times. You've got hundreds of applicants applying for these jobs. So, if 200 people apply for it, statistically, you've already, right off the hop, you've got a 0.5% chance of getting it, if 200 people apply. Right? So, those are the odds that you're dealing with, right? It's a lot better for many, many reasons to go through networking. You reach out to a hiring manager. You're the only one who did that, right? Talk about not having a lot of competition. If they are looking for someone with your skills right then, you're the only one that reached out to them proactively, signaled your passion for the job, signaled your professionalism, signaled how easy you are to deal with and your charisma and all that. You're at the top of the pile. So yeah, I don't know what latest thinking they use for it. Whatever they use, it doesn't really matter because it's all a substitute for actually getting to know somebody. I think the next step is just AI. Just let AI pick you a short list of candidates to call for an interview. They don't even micromanage what the questions are or what the selection criteria is. Just let AI do it. That'll be the next step. I think within the next 5 years, we're going to be there. So that'll be the gateway to crappy jobs in the next 5 years. Tenacious Danzig says, thanks for the answer. I'm not great at networking, but I do reach out to the recruiter on LinkedIn. I've had recruiters say they don't want to talk because they have too many people applying. Yeah, I know. That's why you don't talk to recruiters. Networking, the way I would recommend people do it is you don't network with recruiters. Like, you don't need to network with recruiters. You can already find the recruiters, right? Look at the job postings. There's the recruiters, right? And usually recruiters are recruiting for jobs that are posted, right? With the exception of some executive recruiting, that's how it works. So you don't really need to network with recruiters. Recruiters want you to connect with them so that they can use you when they do searches for like candidates that have very specific things. If you have those, they want you to your name to pop up, right? It's purely for them. What's in your best interest is not to network with recruiters, to network with the hiring managers, the people that are the boss of the recruiters. The hiring manager says, I need a new employee. I manage this department. I've got 25 employees. I need a 26th and a 27th. I need a laborer and I need a master electrician. Okay? They get on the phone to their HR rep, whether that's internal or external. They say, I need a new laborer. I need a new master electrician. I need you guys to fill those positions. So come and meet with me. Let's figure out, what I'll give you guys what you need to put in the job posting, what the requirements are, and you tell me when you can have a short list of candidates for interviews, right? So that's how these things work. The hiring manager is the one that actually creates the job. When someone is hired, the hiring manager is their boss. The recruiter is just a grunt that goes out and finds candidates based on a list of requirements that they are given from a hiring manager. Okay, that's what these jobs are. Recruiters know nothing, usually, or very little, about the jobs that they're actually recruiting for. If they're hiring an accountant job, they're not accountants. They don't know all this accounting type stuff you put on your resume. They don't know what any of those are. Is that good? They don't know. They don't know how to interpret it, right? So they analyze your resume at a very basic level. That's why one of their magical go-to things is, how many years of experience do you have doing this, right? Because that's how they assess your worth. If you don't have any experience doing it, you can't possibly know how to do it, right? So, like that's why they fall back on this like stupid fuzzy logic. You can avoid all of that by going to the hiring manager. You say, hey, I'm a fully qualified accountant. I've had 10 years doing this. I've had 5 years doing that. If ever you're looking for someone that can do this, let me know, because I know about your company and I'd love to work for your company. If ever you want to chat, that would be wonderful. Let me know. Have a great day. Something like that. And they go, hey, I actually need an accountant. You seem really easy to deal with. You seem you got your head screwed on right and you're saying the right things. Let's talk. Let's do a video interview, or let's do an in-person. Can you come to my office, next Tuesday at 3 and, let's explore this. Right? Usually if it's on LinkedIn, they'll check your profile first. So you look professional. You have all the right stuff on your profile. You seem, okay, this person seems to check out, right? Why go through the hassle of dealing with HR? Why go through the expense of posting the job? Why go through the extra work of sitting in rounds of job interviews when this candidate that looks like they have everything and then some just landed right in your lap, right? That's how these things go. I go on these rants and then the feed just moves. So I'm sorry about that. And SRB, you didn't ask a dumb question. You asked a very intelligent question. But there's this whole other level to this stuff that that may not have been mentioned to you. And if it has or it hasn't been, there's more to the story than just what's on your resume. When you get hired through networking, you don't get hired because of your resume. You get hired by what's in front of them, how you interact with them. You know, if they have a meeting with you, an interview with you, just an informal meeting. Usually you could do this over a coffee or you go to their office. I prefer to do it over a coffee. You say like, yeah, you know, I'd love to talk to you. Like, let's go to the nearest Starbucks, you know, something like that. You know, half an hour. And you have an unstructured interaction. You know, they ask you, so what's up? And you ask them, you know, what's up with you? Like, what's the position that you might be looking for? They'll say like, you know, what's your background? And like you explain, right? And that's a much better way of getting to know somebody than looking for keywords on a resume. It's hard, like, how can I put this politely? It's hard to bullshit a hiring manager. If they're the head of the accounting department, it's hard to bullshit them. If you're an accountant or you're not really an accountant, but you're saying you are. You know what I mean? Okay. KK, keep up the good work. Your input really boosts confidence. Love from India. Well, thank you, KK. It's very nice of you to say. And yeah, like do your own, like listen, don't take my word for anything. Do your own research about all this stuff. Try things, okay? Listen to advice from multiple sources, then go try things. And if you keep doing that, you will build up an experience base. You will learn how all of this stuff works, okay? You might not be able to master it overnight, but you will learn it and it will benefit you in your career in multiple ways. Anton, thank you, Bill, for advising. Also interested in the Beyond Employee series. Yeah, I'm gonna take a stab at it. I love to talk about that stuff, you know. Like I build businesses. That's what I do. Hiring and HR is kind of incidental to my career. I'm not an HR person directly. You have to deal with HR. You have to manage people. If you're a supervisor, you have to manage people and all this kind of stuff. You have to influence people. You have to, like, I hate the word leadership, but you know, you have to do that stuff. And so hiring is an extension of that. And, you know, it's something that you just have to do if you're running something. And so I can give that perspective on it. And I think that a lot of people that talk about hiring, they all, for obvious reasons, tend to be recruiters. And that's fine. There are some great recruiters out there that really know their stuff. But they do give a skewed view of hiring and how that works, because especially when you take that one statistic, you know, networking is the most common way that people get jobs. You can verify that, but it's a conflict, or it's kind of weird for a recruiter to tell you that most people don't get a job by going through a recruiter, right? It seems like a conflict of interest somehow. So I feel that they neglect talking about this. You know, now, I mean, I have no skin in the game. If people don't believe me when I say this stuff, that's fine. But go out and try stuff. I mean, you'll see. Or even you might have heard anecdotes. Maybe a friend of a friend got hired because someone they know put in a good word for them at the company, or they met the boss at some event or something, and next thing you know, they're hired, right? I mean, like, I think most people can tell a story like that, right? I mean, that's one example of networking. It's not the most professional story, but that's networking. They didn't go through a recruiter to get that job. They didn't send in their resume and have their resume go through applicant tracking software and have a recruiter look at it and invite them in for an interview. And, you know, like, they didn't do any of that, right? A lot of smaller companies, they don't have formal HR processes. They might only have one person at the company that does HR, and they might not even be full-time, right? They also do payroll and IT and a bunch of other things. And I think this is true for the world, but certainly in my country, in Canada, 85% of people who have jobs, they work in small companies, not big companies, which is weird because, you see big companies all around you, but 85% of people that are employed, they're not working at those big companies. They're working at small companies. And small companies, it's a lot more flexible how they hire people. And there's a lot of advantages. I've worked at big companies, I worked at small companies, and there's a lot of advantages. So, there's many ways to get a job. So, this is the thing. If you limit yourself to only one method, you're only looking in one place, that can limit you. Oh, I'm not making much headway, am I? Let's see here. Thank you. Snowy Owl 91. Is that when you were born? 91? Hey, Bill. This live stream is so awesome. It is extremely helpful, and I really appreciate everything you've been doing with it. Well, thank you very much, Snowy Owl. That's a real ego boost for me, and I'm glad that it's helpful. Is it still possible to get a high-paying job even in your 40s, or is age discrimination a real thing? Of course it's possible. It's certainly possible. How many CEOs of bigger companies do you see that are 21 years old? Zero? People in how many middle managers, like that say are supervising or managing 20 people, 30 people, 50 people, how many of those people are 21 years old? Like 5%? Yeah, like in your 40s, certainly. There's a bit of age discrimination the other way sometimes, where they'll discriminate against young people when it comes to jobs that require experience or that require people skills, management skills, or maturity. Right? So yes, you can certainly get a decent job in your 40s. Now, it depends what your background is and what you're trying to do. Of course, that might come into play and where you are. But generally speaking, yes, that's certainly not a real barrier at all. If you're trying to get a manual labor job, like let's say you're in the skilled trades or something, and you're doing a job that's physically very demanding, when you're 60 years old, now you may have been doing that job for 45 years, but you find that people don't want to hire you because, oh no, you're 60 years old. One of the things that goes through an employer's mind is like, look, here's a candidate that has been doing a physically demanding job for 45 years. They might not have been doing it to the current safety and environmental regulations. So this person could be sick. They could have a condition caused by the work they've done. If I hire them, they're at a higher likelihood that they're going to get sick, they're going to go on disability, they're going to need workers' compensation, something like that, and I've got to pay that, right? Now, depending what country you're in, sometimes the government covers that, and you don't have to worry, but other countries, the employer has to cover it. So even something as straightforward as that will result in a lot of biases, a lot of ageism, because, there's a statistical higher probability that they will incur a higher, workers' compensation cost or something like that. Or their private disability insurance will go up, things like this. So for those types of jobs, there might be an issue there. But generally speaking, across the board, if you're in your 40s or older, it's really not a barrier. You just have to go where they think like that, and you have to go and apply for the jobs where they also are biased towards people that are older, because people that are older have a lot more experience. They have a lot more maturity. There's a lot of great qualities there, right? You don't want to put certain things in the hands of a 21-year-old, right? No offense to 21-year-olds. They are amazing at certain things, but they're not great at others. Just like people that are 65 years old are amazing at some things, but not great at others. For example, embracing the latest change is not something that 65-year-olds are known for, right? Or even 40-year-olds, right? So there's strengths and weaknesses to every age demographic, and it really helps to learn what those are and look like fish where the fish are. Look where people are receptive to that. That's all I can say. Hopefully that makes sense. Tenacious dancing, lots of great advice. Really appreciate it. Thank you. I'm glad you're finding it useful. Good question, Snowy. Yes. Snowy Owl 91 did ask a very intelligent question. That's great. Oh, I got a question about immigration and stuff. Everybody's asking me about immigration. I know this is like a thing, but that's, as I keep saying, that's not really my area of expertise. I know a little bit, but that's not my area. Any advice for people from Europe who seek employment in the United States? And I'm not in the United States, so advising someone from Europe to go to the United States is just I'm unfortunately the wrong person to talk to for that. Yeah, presumably ask an American, and probably the good source of information would be on the internet, would be the U.S. government websites on immigration and work visas. Make sure obviously you check that stuff out first. Saganaro, is that how you say that? I'm so scared because of my upcoming interview. How do you overcome self-doubt in an interview? It seems to me that other candidates are stronger than me, and it is very stressful for me to go to an interview. Saganaro, first of all, you are not alone and you're not unusual. Everybody feels that way. Everybody. Okay? When they're starting out. Now, some people get over it quicker. Maybe they're more extroverted, they have more social skills, they have less social anxiety, they're more extroverted type personality as opposed to introverted. That can help. But everyone feels that way. Now, how do you get over it? Practice. Practice makes perfect. It's like if somebody said, okay, I want you to sit down at a piano and play me this piece by Beethoven. I want you to play it perfectly. You're not going to be able to do it, right? Unless you already know piano. You got to work at these things, right? It's a skill like any other. And it's basically it's very similar to public speaking skills. You have to practice. It helps learning a bit of theory, but you then have to practice. Now, for job interviews specifically, what can really help is if you do mock interviews, okay? So that's where you grab a friend or a family member, okay? And just say look, can you help me prepare for an interview? I just need you to ask me, here's a list of questions. You just pretend this is a job interview and ask me these questions. And, we're gonna do some rehearsal for this, right? Someone that has a little bit of time on their hands is someone that is available. If you're starting out, a friend or a family member will do. Your spouse, your parents, your brother, whatever. They can do this, and the way you do this is, first of all, you prepare on your own. You learn the answers to common job interview questions, that kind of thing. You learn what they're looking for in a job interview. Then when you feel like you know that stuff, then do some pretend interviews, mock interviews with a friend or family member. Do a rehearsal, okay? And do a bunch of that. Do it over and over and over. It's not something you can really do in a day. It takes days and days. It takes several weeks to really feel comfortable and to get some confidence, because you feel you're good. You feel like you're prepared. Okay? The confidence comes through feeling that you're prepared and you can handle it. And the way to feel like you're prepared and you can handle it is to rehearse it and have it go well, right? It's not going to go well in the beginning, but you do it again and again and again until it does go well. And then once you've done that, like if you want to really do this right, then you go out and you do a bunch of job interviews. And the more you do, the better you get. And every time they ask you a weird question that you've never heard before, you never anticipated, every time that something goes wrong, you're forearmed for the next time. You'll never make the same mistake again. You'll never be caught unawares again with that particular thing, right? So that's how it goes. So don't worry about it, okay? Everybody can interview well. It's just you need to prepare like anything else, like any other skill in life. You have to learn it and then practice. And the more practice, the better you get. And then the better you get, the more confident you feel. How to get some free preparation from Shaquille Oatmeal. Shaquille Oatmeal. I want to say Shaquille Oatmeal. That's what I want to say, but well, like I said, just learn it do it yourself, learn answers to questions yourself, memorize answers, all that kind of stuff. And then, as I said, grab a friend or a family member, whoever is around that has time on their hands to help you do that. I mean, there are a lot of HR companies that that like offer this service, but usually it's for executives. It's like a lot of money per hour. It's like usually not affordable, not practical for, people at worker level jobs. It's not really necessary anyway. You don't need that. That's not necessary. Save your money, just like a friend or a family member will do. And the idea is that when you do this pretend interview with them, you're going to feel nervous. You're going to feel weird. And that's good because that's simulating what you're going to feel when you get to an interview, right? You can recreate it in your own home and do it again and again and again in controlled circumstances until you get good and it's not a problem anymore. Right? I will ask my girlfriend and practice questions. Thanks for the answer. This is my dream job, and there is a very serious selection. That's why I'm so worried. Look, the other thing, Sagunaro, if I'm saying that right, is the other thing everybody has to realize is that whether you get selected for a job or not, the biggest factor that determines that is not you. It's them. It's what they were happening to look for. And like I've said before, a lot of employers are looking for just ridiculous, idiotic things. And they say, "Oh, well, I'm sorry, we're not going to move forward with you." And it's like, some people are looking for the most retarded things. It's the most ridiculous things. It's kind of a compliment if you weren't selected. You know what I mean? You go to, I've seen CEOs and executives go to presentations from medical doctors where they talk about sociopathy, psychopaths, what's wrong in their brain. They don't feel emotions. They treat people like objects. When I drink this cup of, this is actually Red Bull I'm drinking. Do I care about the welfare of this cup? No, of course not. I don't even think of that. That's how they regard other people, right? So usually they're bad to have, but if you want someone that can fire a bunch of people or be very ruthless, like in the jobs that require that, those people tend to excel in those jobs. So you get a lot of misguided business people that want to learn about psychopathy, and they want to try and hire those people. Now, if you go to a job interview with them and you get rejected, it turns out they were looking for a sociopath. But they didn't hire you. You go away thinking, "Oh, I'm no good." And you get all depressed. You know what I mean? Like, that's how fake this thing is. Okay? So as I'm sure you will agree, everybody needs to know, if you don't get a job, the biggest factor at play here is not something you can control. It's about what they happen to be looking for. This is evidenced by the fact that you interview with one company. That company says, no, sorry, you're a non-starter. We're not going to proceed with you. We're going to go with somebody else. And you feel terrible about it. You then go interview at a different company. You basically answer the questions the same way. And they think you're awesome and they hire you. Like you didn't change. You're still the same person with the same education, same experience, same skills, soft skills. What changed was them, right? It's a numbers game. Okay, so I know this is your dream job and we tend to get very, very nervous about stuff like that, but just always keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, I need to be wrapping this up in the next couple of minutes. So I'll just answer maybe the questions that are here. And Shaquille Oatmeal says, when asked questions that I haven't prepared, such as, how many coins can fit in this room? It is just natural to freeze. Well, it is if you're unprepared, yeah. Do you have any advice on that, sir? I really appreciate all of your help. Part of the reason that people freeze is because they're nervous. Now if you were perfectly comfortable and you were at the dinner table having dinner and your close family member that you live with asks you that same question, would you freeze? Probably not. You would probably be able to give some kind of answer. So usually the reason why we freeze is because we're nervous. So if you do the things I was talking about a minute ago, like where you do mock interviews and you practice over and over and over again, you get confident, you go to a lot of job interviews, you will lose a lot of that nervousness and that anxiety. So that can help. Okay, so that's one thing you can do. Antonio Lopez says, hey, Bill, thanks for everything. Love listening to your videos in the car while at my current crappy job. Well, my heart goes out to you, Antonio Lopez. You are not alone, and many people have crappy jobs. How much embellishment is acceptable on a resume? I'm terribly unqualified for jobs out there. Yeah, that's a lot of times that's because what they say are requirements are not really requirements. They claim that, their requirements are so varied and, many. The answer is the answer I always give. Go get a job through networking, because as I said, they don't hire you on your resume. They hire you on the message you send, what you choose to say. If it's on LinkedIn, they might look at your profile, what's on your profile, which is kind of like your resume. But, if that's good, they will want to talk to you. And they will hire you based on how that goes. Like when they interact with you, they don't hire you based on your resume. They hire you based on their experience dealing with you. And that starts from the moment that you proactively choose to contact them. The fact that you did that. How many people do that? Not very many. Already you've elevated yourself above all the other candidates that might technically be more qualified than you, but they didn't do this. They didn't proactively reach out to the company, thus signaling their professionalism and their enthusiasm. And what are job interviews about? They're about fit. And one of the big things in fit, that term that we all love, is, are you enthusiastic about this job? And are you professional? Right? Well, they don't have to ask you any questions on that because you've just shown them you are. Okay? Check out networking. Do research into networking, what it is, how to get a job through networking. I've got a ton of videos on it. I've got these courses that are on the screen, like the Get Hired course. I take you all through that. So if that's any value to you, that's an option. There's a link in the description if you want to learn more about it. But, learn about that. Okay? I mean, think about how people change careers, okay? No one will ever change careers by going to a recruiter, because the recruiter, the first question out of their mouth is going to be, how many years of experience do you have doing this? And your answer is always going to be 0, because you're changing careers, right? If this was the only way to get a job, nobody would be able to change careers, right? You change careers because you do it through networking. You go to somebody, you go to a hiring manager, you say like, look, for the last 15 years, I've worked in IT, okay? IT, I've done sales in IT. But I don't want to be in IT. What I'd really like to do is do what you guys do here. I don't know what that is. Accounting, okay? I've taken an accounting course, okay? You know, I know I can be a bookkeeper. I'm passionate about that. I'm great with numbers. I love working with numbers. I love order. I love organization. If you're looking for a bookkeeper that's passionate about what they do, that's always organized, you know, let me know, because that's me and I know about your company. I'd love to work for you guys. If ever you're looking for someone like that, give me a call. You know, that's how people change careers. Because, okay, you don't have a lot of experience as a bookkeeper. You've got experience in IT. But a hiring manager receiving this message, and maybe they say, like, that's enough to get them to say, I'd like to talk to you. And then you talk to them, and you talk to them about what you've done in IT and, you know, numbers and what you've, like all that kind of stuff. And they like you, and they like what they're hearing, and they see that you're a professional, competent, personable individual. They'll say, sure, you know, I'm going to give you a chance. Let's try this out. Okay? That's how people change careers. Okay, I have to be going. So these questions that are here, that's it. Very quickly. Where was I here? Here we go. Fonzie, Henry Winkler. How can I tell the company that wants to hire me to allow me a couple of days to think about the job offer, so I may discuss a potential leave or pay raise with my present employer? I don't know if you need to, like, if it's a couple of days, I don't know if you need to tell them anything. Like, generally, the way these things work, if you get back, like, say a job offer, if you get back to someone within 48 hours, that's reasonable. Okay? 3 days, depending on the situation, it might be reasonable or it might not be, depending on the deal. Okay? But 48 hours is certainly reasonable. Okay? So if you don't have to say anything, just quickly try and take care of this leave discussion or pay raise discussion with your current employer and say, like, look, I got a tight deadline on this, you know? And I wouldn't say to the company who wants to hire you, like, I wouldn't put the brakes on it in any way. I wouldn't say, like, well, hold on, I got to discuss this other thing with my employer to see if I'm going to stay. Don't say that. That's like, what do you think their responses or their thoughts are going to be when they hear that? They're going to think, oh, okay, this person, it seemed like they were interested, but now they're not interested. Now it's likely, I get the impression that they're going to pull out, right? So they might rescind their job offer. So don't give them any of that. Okay, just move quickly, try and have this discussion, and then don't make excuses for it. Just get on with it, and then get back to them within 2 days. And finally, Sagunaro says, thanks, you gave me some confidence for sure. Going to rewatch your videos again. Thank you, Sagunaro. That's very kind of you to say. Thank you to everyone who's been here. There's 47 of you guys here. I hope you got some value out of it. As always, if you want to go deeper, there's a couple of things you can do. First of all, I have my Get Hired course, right? So that's kind of for my stuff, it's the definitive guide. I take you through everything from beginning to end. You know, how to do your resume, how to do networking, how to do your LinkedIn profile, all that stuff. You know, how to do interviewing. A lot of the interviewing stuff, you know, I've already sort of covered on my YouTube videos, but I sort of go through it from beginning to end, all the essentials. and how to get a job in the post-job market, how to get a job in the hidden job market. So that's all there in one place in the step-by-step kind of order. If that's of any interest to you, there's always that. You can check out my other channel, The Company's Expert 2. That's where these live streams are going to be archived. So this will end up over there. I'll leave it on my channel for like maybe a day or 12 hours or something, but then it will end up on my second channel with all my others. So there's a bunch of those there. So if you're driving in your car, maybe you shouldn't listen to it when you drive in your car. I don't want to put anyone to sleep and have them end up in a ditch or something. But there you go. There's a bunch of other stuff there on my second channel too. And also, I'm going to mention it. This is all the more relevant because I've got that new live stream starting this Friday, Beyond Employment, where we're talking about, making a living, making money, making your fortune, but not as an employee. There are other things out there other than being an employee. Okay, you could own a company, you could start your own thing, you could do side hustles. I mean, you could even be an investor. I don't think I'm going to be talking about that, but like these things are other ways to make money, other than working as an employee. But what's more practical for people is, starting up your own business, whether it's a startup, something innovative, or it's like just a small business, right? Which is a bit more traditional. There are pros and cons to both. I'm going to be covering both of those. And for that kind of stuff, if you want to improve yourself, you want to learn business, I have this other course, the $100 MBA course. And I made it specifically for people that want the knowledge, but they don't need a fancy piece of paper. They don't need a degree. It's an unaccredited MBA. And the reason why it's unaccredited is because you don't do any evaluations, you don't do any tests, you don't do any exams. I have no way of knowing what you've learned in this program. Or you could go as deep as you want, you could go really deep and get the equivalent knowledge that you would in a full-blown university MBA program, like a brick and mortar MBA, where you pay 5 figures and it takes you 1 to 2 years. Okay, you can get that same level of knowledge from this course because you're using all the same textbooks. You're using the same textbooks that they've used at Harvard and some of the standard textbooks that are used in the best universities around the world in their MBA programs, their business programs. Or you could just skim the topics. You could just like flip through the books, skim the topics, skim the general idea. There you go. You're done, right? You could go as deep into it or as light into it as you want. And that's the beauty of it. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're just trying to get knowledge. So if you just want the knowledge, it's a self-study thing. I'm the guide. I give you some videos, but you also order the books and you learn the material. And it's the actual knowledge. It's not some coffee table book that really is a distortion of the principles that are taught in universities that are known by professionals. Like, it's funny because I was on LinkedIn, and I always find LinkedIn a little bit funny because they're trying to turn LinkedIn into Facebook. And so you got all these posts and they're all about leadership. And it's like some of the stuff that people write about things like leadership, it's like leadership, I've learned, according to these people, is pretty much anything you want it to be. It's someone will sort of say, here's what you need to have to be a leader, which is all pseudoscience, by the way, everything they're saying, including political views, ethical views. It's like, if you have their worldview, basically, they claim that now you're a leader. I've seen stuff like that on there. It's just such, like, if you were, like, I can't help but wonder if I was like someone who was young and I wanted to learn business and I was interested in business and I started reading that, because that's what's in my face. That's what's most readily available. I would have been misled, So anyway, that's why I created the $100 MBA course. It's none of that. You're reading textbooks. I didn't write the textbooks. They're written by some of the world's leading authorities on the respective areas like marketing, finance, accounting, HR, organizational behavior, innovation, management, like operations, all that kind of stuff. and you're getting it right from the source. So anyway, if that's of any interest to you, there's a link in the description. And there you go. Other than that, I will see you guys on Friday if you want to tune in really, really late, early Saturday morning. And I will be here also next Wednesday for another one of these. Thank you so much for being here. You guys are awesome. And I will see you next week. Take care of yourselves.